All right, welcome back, guys. So in this training, I'm going to go over one of my favorite eating strategies for helping you adhere to a lower calorie intake. So, if you're trying to lose fat, maybe you're just trying to stay lean, right? And you're trying to just prevent yourself from going over the calorie target that you have. This is a perfect strategy for you, and it's called intermittent fasting. So let's get into it. So I've been intermittent fasting for years now, and it's really just a game changer for helping you adhere to a lower calorie intake, right? If you're like myself, it's very easy to eat food. I can, eat 3,000, 4,000 calories easy, but sticking to a lower calorie intake to achieve my fitness goals has always been very difficult for me. So what I started doing is this strategy right here, intermittent fasting, which helps you control your eating into a specific window, an eating window, so that it's easier to eat less calories and you can lose weight without feeling like you're super restrictive all the time. So first things first, right? What are we going to talk about? First is obviously what is fasting, right? What is intermittent fasting? Second, why should you do it? What are the benefits? Third, how to do it, right? What's the best way to do it? What's the best way to set it up? And then lastly, some tips on how you can get better at fasting and make it more easy to do, especially long term. So what is intermittent fasting? Essentially what it is just alternating between periods of fasting and eating. And whether you realize it or not, everybody already intermittent fast, right? When you sleep, you're going a couple hours without consuming calories, which essentially puts you in the fasted state. So what we're doing with intermittent fasting here is we're just going to prolong that nighttime fast a couple hours into the day. For example, I like doing, 3 to 5 hours. I think that's a good number to shoot for. So what this might look like is, yesterday, the previous day, you might have your last meal at 8 p.m. And then today you wake up, you fast a couple hours, and you have your first meal at 12 p.m., which is a gap of 16 hours, which is essentially a 16-hour fast. And if you do a 16-hour fast, this leaves you an eating window from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., which is an 8-hour eating window. So this is a popular method, the 16-8 method, where you fast 16 hours, you eat 8 hours. This is what I do most days. However, you don't have to be super strict about it, right? I don't, wait exactly till 12 or exactly till 8. It's more just a general template of how to structure your day. So sometimes I might eat at 11, sometimes I might eat at 2, right? At nighttime, I might stop eating at 6:30, sometimes 10 p.m. at night. So it really doesn't matter that much, but it's more just the idea of pushing your first meal a couple hours into the day so that you have less of the day to fit your calories into. And now let's get into why this is important, right? Why should you do this? And essentially, there's a couple solid reasons why I recommend intermittent fasting. Most of them are fitness related. There are a lot of health benefits. I won't get into those too much, but the main reason is because when you have less of the day to fit your calories into, you can have bigger meals and more satisfying foods. If you're eating just from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and you have 2,400 calories to spend, you have less of the day to fit that into. So you can have, for example, two bigger meals. Each of them could be over 1,000 calories, and you can still be losing weight, seeing great results. So it makes you feel like you're not dieting, you're not cutting, but you actually are able to hit the calorie intake you're going for. So that's really the main reason I like it. When I don't fast, in the past, what I used to do is have 3 to 5 smaller meals, which a lot of people will recommend. And that just did not work for me because having so many opportunities to eat made it more likely for me to screw up during one of those, right? Usually in the morning, I'd be fine. But, if you're having 5 meals a day, at the end of the day, by meal 4 or 5, first of all, you don't have that many calories left to use. And it's also, if you have been draining your willpower all day, trying to eat clean, it's easier to screw up and go over your calories. So that's why I personally recommend fasting so you can have bigger meals. Second benefit is you can just be more flexible with your eating. So, if you're having less of the day to fit your calories into, you could have, for example, 2 moderate meals and still have calories left over for dessert, a couple drinks. If you wanted to, you could save a bunch of calories and just have a massive dinner, pretty much eat whatever you want, right? So there's a lot of different ways on how you can set it up. It's all about being flexible with your calories. And since you have less of the day to fit those calories in, there's just so much you can do with it in terms of fitting in your favorite foods and making hitting your calories more enjoyable. So those are the two main benefits. Third benefit is actually more of a productivity benefit. And what you're going to find is when you're in the fasted state, when you're in the morning and you're fasting, you will have just more productivity, more mental clarity. So what I personally do is I wake up, I have some caffeine, right? some water, and I'll just start doing my hardest task of the day first. So I'll just, get straight to work. And when you have no food in your stomach, your body isn't digesting, you just become very sharp and like focused. I will usually just bang out a couple hours of work. And then, once I feel like I've kind of earned that first meal, I'll have the first meal. And I've actually kind of experimented with this. There are some times I might wake up and have a meal, especially when you have, a lot of carbohydrates or, too much sugar in your meal, you're going to crash very early. And that oftentimes makes me want to consume more caffeine to compensate for that, right? In the past, I used to wake up, have bigger breakfasts, and then I would just crash and I would either want caffeine or more food, right? And then it was harder to get work done, where when you're in the fasted state, you can just wake up, have some caffeine, some water, get to work. You're feeling great. You're feeling sharp. And then you could have, your first meal and have, more selection on what you consume throughout the rest of the day. So that's number three. The fasted state, you just feel so much more dialed in. And then the last benefit is actually more of a health benefit called autophagy, which essentially, when you're in a fast, especially towards the end of your fast, since your body is not, burning calories, working to digest food, it can use that energy elsewhere. So what it starts to do is reuse your old and dead cells to try and, get more energy and be more efficient. So that's definitely a cool added benefit, autophagy. For me personally, I just find it helps me not get sick as often when I do fasting, because your body is, every single day going and reusing a lot of your dead and old cells. It's easier to just have a better immune system as a result of that. So now that you know kind of how fasting works, why I recommend doing it, I now want to talk about how to actually get through the fast, right? Especially if you're not used to it, it might be a little bit difficult to not eat first thing in the morning, right? So essentially, the main rule is you just don't want to consume calories. There are a lot of different things that I recommend having. For example, water. I personally like sparkling water a lot, just because the carbonation kind of fills you up and just makes you less hungry. I will drink a lot of like San Pellegrino or some sparkling spring water. Second is caffeinated beverages, right? And it has to be obviously 0 calories. So black coffee or tea, I really like. Both of them actually are an appetite suppressant. So if you have, for example, black coffee or, some espresso shots or some tea, and you don't put all the calories in it, it's going to help blunt your hunger and make it way easier to fast to your first meal. So sparkling water, caffeinated beverages. Recently, I've been taking electrolytes, which you can see on the screen as well. These are good because they're 0 calorie and they just help replenish, for example, potassium, sodium. So your body is more hydrated through the fast. And then lastly, I don't recommend these all the time, but from time to time, if you want to have a 0 calorie energy drink, that's going to help you get through the fast. That can definitely help at least, build the habit of fasting. However, that's not something you really want too often. It's more of a from time to time. Maybe you're, on the road, if you go to a gas station and you want to prolong the fast, it's definitely an option. So those are the 4 things I recommend. And then pretty much besides that, you really just don't want to consume calories. There has been some research on how many calories it takes to break a fast. For me personally, anytime I consume over 30 calories or so, that's when I kind of feel that the fast is broken. You can kind of feel when you break the fast because your body starts to spike its insulin and you actually get more hungry, right? When you first consume calories, especially more of the carbohydrates, your body starts to produce hunger so that you eat food, right? So those are some ways on how you can get through the fast. And then the next component is obviously the eating window, right? So let's say you do the fast, it's 1 p.m., right? And you're ready to eat. How should you set your day up? And really the goal is just the most enjoyable way to hit your calories. So what I'm going to show you is how I do it. I've tried a lot of different methods. What I personally find works the best is having 2 bigger meals with an optional smaller meal and then an optional snack as well. So for example, fast till 12 or 1 p.m. and I'll have my first meal. And this essentially is my breakfast or my lunch, however you want to put it, right? And what I usually will do is try to make it, a moderate amount of calories. So 500 to 800, give or take. A lot of more protein and fat I like to focus on, just so I feel, good, satiated, bang out some calories, some protein, but also saving me calories for later, right? You definitely can have a bigger first meal, but for me personally, I find, anywhere between 500 to 800 calories is perfect to fill you up without kind of leaving you, too sluggish, especially halfway through the workday, right? You want to keep staying focused so you can get stuff done. So that's how I approach the first meal. Second meal is my dinner. And for this, at this point, I have a lot of calories to work with, which is honestly amazing, right? If you have, 500 to 800 calories for your first meal, and let's say your calorie target is 2,400, you have, over 1,000 calories, well over 1,000 calories for your dinner. So that's usually my second meal. And then third is kind of an optional meal. If I have calories at the end of the day, I will have some sort of a snack just to kind of hit my calories, maybe kill some cravings, right? just to kind of make the process enjoyable. So 2 meals, optional third meal. Besides that, I try to keep snacking to a minimum. If you're going to have a snack, I recommend fruit, or if you're on the go, a protein bar is not a bad option. Usually, I don't like to go over 200 or 300 calories worth of snacks just because that cuts into your meals, right? You want to have most of your food during your meals because oftentimes what you're going to have during your meal is more nutritious and satiating than what you're going to have as a snack. So that's kind of how I set that up. And then, in terms of just timing on the bottom, you might have your first meal around noon, 3 p.m. You might have a little snack, some fruit, protein bar, dinner around 6. And then maybe 8 o'clock, you got a couple hundred calories left. You can finish them off with a smaller meal. So that's kind of how I like to set things up. And I included this slide because I want to show you 3 different options, kind of how to make this a lifestyle friendly approach, right? First option is, a typical work day, right? Where I'm at home. I can prepare my own meals and kind of how I would set things up. Second option is, let's say it's a Friday or Saturday and you want to eat out, maybe have a drink or two, how to approach that. And then the third option is if you want to fit in a dessert or, a more unhealthy food to your day of eating, how to approach that. So example 1, oftentimes I'll wake up, I'll fast, and my first meal, I will have eggs and some avocado, right? An omelet, however you want to prepare your eggs. Usually I'll cook it in a little bit of butter, and then I'll cut up an avocado just for some healthy fats. Then 3 p.m., I might have, 200, 300 calories, maybe a protein bar, an apple, just to kind of hold me over. And then at this point, 6 p.m., I might have a solid 900 calories of usually some sort of meat like ground beef, a carb source. I like sweet potatoes a lot. They're very filling. And then maybe a vegetable of choice, right? So, this example, I had 2 decent sized meals, a snack, but I still have 600 calories left at the end of the day, right? So what I might do on a day like that is maybe 8 p.m., have a smaller meal that I was talking about, that third meal, especially something filling and, satiating. So I personally like having a Greek yogurt bowl, which what I'll usually do is put either, a serving or half serving of peanut butter. I'll put some raw honey, maybe a scoop of protein powder or some fruit in it, kind of just making a nice protein packed filling meal. So that's kind of an example of a normal day, having a bigger dinner, having a end of the day meal to kind of kill cravings, make you feel good. And then earlier in the day, we're having a moderate size first meal and a either fruit or protein bar for a snack. So that's example 1. Example 2 is, let's say I want to go eat out. This example at a Mexican restaurant, right? Huge fan of that type of food. What I might do, fast, 12 p.m., have one of those Greek yogurt bowls. 3 p.m., I might just have a little bit of fruit. This example, I like mango a lot. And then 6 p.m., at this point, we have only consumed 800 calories for the day. So I have a ton of calories to spend. So I might have, some steak tacos, maybe some chips and guac, and a margarita or 2, right? And let's say that comes out to 1,200 calories. It's a pretty solid meal. At this point, I still have 400 calories left to use. So, I might come home 8:30 and have some eggs or English muffins or something to kind of finish those calories off. So that's an example of that. If you wanted to, you could actually take those 400 calories and put them to your dinner and have 1,600 calories, right? Have an even bigger meal. And if that's what you want to do, you have the option to do that. So that's why I like having that flexibility. And then example 3, this is an example of, maybe it's during the week and I was just craving some sort of dessert, right? How to make that work. For this example, it's kind of similar to the first one. I might have, the eggs and avocado meal for a snack, the fruit protein bar, of course, and then dinner, usually some sort of meat, steak, chicken, fish, some potatoes, and a vegetable of choice. Try to keep it around 1,000 calories. And at that point, I'm at 2,000 calories and I have 400 calories left. So this example, a lot of the things I've been eating are high in protein, high in good fats. So I'm probably going to be relatively satiated at this point. So what I might do is have 400 calories of whatever I want. Recently, I've been having these Tate's cookies. They come in a green bag. Their ingredient profile is relatively good for, packaged cookies, but it really kind of just kills my craving for desserts, right? Because they come in containers of 7 cookies. And one container is, I believe, 490 calories. So if you have 6 cookies, that's around 400 calories, which is pretty cool to finish the day eating 6 cookies, right? And still getting leaner. So those are 3 examples of how I would approach it. And like I said, you can approach it however you want. I find 2 meals, 1 smaller meal seems to work the best. But if you really want to do, 4 meals, you can essentially do whatever you want. You can even do 1 meal, right? Some people will do 1 meal, although it's hard to adhere to that, but that's kind of how a full day would look. And then the last slide is just some tips on how you can make intermittent fasting easier, more user-friendly. So first one is just the idea of forgetting about the exact eating window, right? There are a lot of people who will do, the 16-8 method or some other method, and they will get very technical with the exact time, right? They won't eat anything until 12 and they won't eat anything after 8. So, if it's 8:03 and they miss their meal, some people will literally wait for the next day, which is pretty crazy. So what I want you to do is just use that mindset of just pushing your first meal a couple hours into the day, but don't get so caught up on the exact time, right? Some days I might eat at 11 a.m. Some days I might eat at 2 p.m. It really just depends on your schedule and what works better for you when you actually get hungry. In terms of the end of the day, same idea applies to this. Some days I might eat dinner at 6 and finish the calories at 6. Some days I might have my last meal or snack at 10 o'clock at night, right? So it doesn't really matter when you stop eating. The premise is just having some of the day where you're fasting, especially in the morning, so you can have more flexibility in bigger meals. So that's really the first point. Second is using caffeine strategically. I personally don't recommend overdoing it with the caffeine. In the past, I used to definitely have a lot of caffeine because it was an appetite suppressant. And while sure that might help you lose weight quicker, you start to become very dependent on caffeine. And you get to a point where you wake up and you just feel awful without having a coffee or some caffeine. And I just didn't like how reliant I was getting on it. It also, costs more to be consuming more caffeinated beverages. So what I recommend doing is just limiting the caffeine for the fast. So, from when you wake up to your first meal, if you want to have one or two coffees or teas, that's totally fine. But once you have that first meal, I would try to limit caffeine for the rest of the day, or even just take it out altogether, right? So strategic caffeine, it will help you get through the fast. After the fast, I would try not to rely too much on it. If you can cut it out, that's even better. So number 3, conquer the biggest task of the day. And this is a great one. Like I said before, I like when I'm fasting to just get hard things done, right? Sometimes I might do my workout fasted. You just want to make sure you're drinking water and you feel good. It just feels good to get a hard task done and then earn your meal and have your meal after. Most of the time, though, I will just get work done at my computer. I'll have a coffee, get my biggest task for the day done, and then noon, kind of take a little break, eat a first meal, maybe, take 20 minutes, check my phone, whatever. And that just seems to work best with me. So that's number 3. 4 is work out intelligently. And this is actually a great tip. So if you are going to work out fast, you don't want to push it too hard, right? If you're going to lift, you want to stick to the strength training, right? You don't want to do too much volume. I find strength training fasted is fine. But if you're doing a ton of exercises, maybe you're doing a little bit of cardio in there, that's when you can start to get a little lightheaded. And it's harder to really push yourself. So I recommend if you're going to fast, either strength train, or the second option is like walk, right? Low intensity cardio. A lot of people will do fasted cardio. For me personally, I am totally fine doing a fasted walk or even the Stairmaster if you're at a lower setting for, 30, 40 minutes and you'll feel fine. What you don't want to do is a bunch of intense running or an intense workout, right? That's not something you want to do fasted. So I would limit it to either strength training or low intensity cardio. And the last tip is I would recommend giving fasting about a solid 3 weeks before you decide whether you want to continue or not, right? If you try fasting for a week and you're just not the biggest fan, I would probably give it another week or two. Usually after at least 2 weeks, 2 or 3, you will get a sense if it will work for you, right? If you do it for 3 full weeks and you still are having a really hard time doing it, it's just not working for you, then that's totally fine. At least you tried it. But what you don't want to do is try it for 3 days and say, yeah, this is not for me and not do it. So definitely just give it some time. You will adapt to it. I'm at a point where I've just done it for so long. I am just used to it. And for me, it actually feels like abnormal to eat first thing in the morning just because I'm not used to it. I'm just used to having some water, maybe a coffee, and then around noon, that's when I start to get hungry. So those are some tips that I would recommend trying. And besides that, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over with intermittent fasting. Hopefully you found this helpful. I think it definitely is a game changer. If you are someone who's having a harder time eating less calories, like I said, if your goal is actually to eat more calories, like if you're trying to get more calories in, then this probably is not the best option for you. If anything, it will probably benefit you more to eat first thing in the morning to get more of those calories in. And if that's the case, having maybe more frequent meals might be better for you. So this is not for everyone, but if you're having a hard time staying lean, or maybe you want to speed up fat loss, this is a great tool to have in your toolbox for fitness, as I like to put it. So hopefully you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.